Terrifying secret. Inside an 8,000-year-old tomb has been revealed, shocking the world. Hello, and welcome to the Ancient History Channel. My friends, people often think archaeology is a dry profession, digging in the dirt, uncovering old objects, and bringing them back for study. But you know what? The truth is far from that. Because sometimes it takes just a single strike of an archaeologist's shovel for a terrifying secret from the past to be dragged into the light. From skeletal remains found in bizarre positions, to graves arranged in ways no one can explain, or artifacts bearing traces of rituals that science still can't fully understand to this day, all of it is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. And what's even more striking is that these discoveries are not rare. All around the world, from remote and desolate regions to places that seem all too familiar, archaeologists have continuously uncovered evidence that forces them to ask, how did ancient humans truly live, and what did they believe in? Some of these stories, once revealed, have sparked intense debate within the scientific community, sometimes even silence, because no one can fully explain them. And the deeper researchers dig, the more they analyze, the more they begin to realize one unsettling truth. The past was far from as gentle as we once believed. So, are you curious to find out what mysterious discoveries archaeologists have brought to light in recent years? And what terrifying secrets might be hidden behind them? If your answer is yes, then right now, let's dive into today's video together. 8,000-year-old child's grave reveals an ancient ritual that shocked scientists. During an excavation on Alor Island, a remote island in Indonesia where nature remains largely untouched and barely influenced by modern humans, a team of scientists from the Australian National University discovered an ancient grave dating back to the early Holocene period, around 8,000 years ago. But what truly stunned them was not its age. It was the remains of a child and the way the child had been buried. According to analysis, the child was only about 4 to 8 years old, an age that should have been filled with laughter, yet instead became the center of a mysterious burial ritual. And here's the unsettling part. The deeper researchers looked into it, the more they realized this was no ordinary grave. According to Dr. Sofia Samper-Caro, who led the excavation, modern analytical technologies revealed a highly unusual detail. On the child's face, specifically the cheeks and forehead, there were traces of red pigment, known as ochre. This was not something that appeared by chance. It had clearly been deliberately applied by human hands as part of a ritual. And it didn't stop there. Just beneath the child's head, archaeologists also discovered a pebble stained with the same red ochre. This led them to a major question. Could this red color have held some kind of spiritual meaning? Was it a symbol of life, of blood, or perhaps a way to guide the soul into the afterlife? But even that wasn't the most disturbing part. What truly makes this discovery haunting is the fact that the child's arm and leg bones had been removed before burial. Yes, you heard that right. The body was not intact when it was laid to rest. These bones appear to have been taken elsewhere and treated in some way that science has still not been able to clearly explain. So why did ancient people do this? Was it part of a sacred ritual or a belief system we have yet to understand? That question still lingers. However, Dr. Samper-Caro acknowledges that this may have been an element of the belief system of the people at that time, a system that remains largely a mystery to this day. What makes this even more remarkable is that such a burial practice is extremely rare, and this is the first time it has ever been documented in Indonesia. Because of that, this is not just an archaeological discovery. It opens a doorway into the past, revealing that ancient people may have had very different perspectives on death, especially when it came to the death of a child. 8,000-year-old sun seal, the mystery of ancient power, just revealed. There are things that lie silently beneath the earth for thousands of years, seemingly forgotten entirely, yet with just one excavation, they can tell a story of power, belief, and secrets that modern humans may not fully understand. And this time, that story begins at an ancient mound known as Yeşilova, located in Izmir, Turkey. During what seemed like a routine excavation, experts from the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism unexpectedly discovered a small artifact, yet one carrying the weight of thousands of years of history. It was a stone seal, estimated to be around 8,000 years old. At first glance, it might seem simple, right? But the more closely experts examined it, the deeper they analyzed it, the more they realized this was no ordinary object. Using modern archaeological techniques, From material analysis to chronological comparison, researchers gradually uncovered a remarkable possibility. This seal may once have belonged to a king, someone who stood at the very peak of power thousands of years ago. And this detail alone has sparked intense curiosity, because if true, it could represent one of the rare pieces of evidence of an early power structure in human history. But what makes this seal truly extraordinary lies in the design carved onto its surface. At the center of the seal is an image resembling the sun, radiating 7 evenly spaced rays, a symbol that may appear simple, yet carries profound meaning across many ancient cultures. Think about it. Why the sun? And why 7 rays, not 6 or 8? According to researchers, during the Neolithic period, the sun was not merely a source of light. It was seen as a symbol of supreme deities, closely associated with the sky and life itself. Therefore, a king using a seal bearing the sun symbol may not have been simply marking ownership, but asserting a form of sacred authority, as if he were protected or even sanctioned by the gods. The seal measures about 2.8 inches in diameter. Not large, but enough to leave a clear impression when used. And this detail raises even more questions. What was it used to stamp? Clay? Documents? Or ritual objects? Of course, those questions remain unanswered. For now, experts continue to study the seal in greater depth, especially by using microscopes to examine its surface. Patterns of wear, tiny traces, and subtle marks. All of these could be the keys to unlocking the true purpose of this artifact. And you know what? The most fascinating part isn't what we've discovered, it's what we still don't fully understand. A small seal, yet it opens up a vast picture of power, belief, and how ancient people perceive the world. So what do you think? Was this seal simply a tool of a king, or was it a symbol of something far greater, where power and divinity became one? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's explore it together. The mysterious 3-person tomb and the truth behind the murals that made everyone think. There are some tombs that, once excavated, don't just tell a story about death, they reveal deeply human, everyday secrets of those who have passed on. And sometimes it's the smallest details, a strange posture, a painting on a wall, that become the key to unlocking a story no one ever expected. The story of this mysterious tomb of 3 individuals is a perfect example. It all began in November 2010. While surveying a section of Dingfeng Road along the Xiaodong Expressway in Henan Province, China, an archaeological team accidentally discovered traces of an ancient tomb buried underground. At first, the signs were faint, but as excavation progressed, they quickly realized there weren't just 1, but 2 tombs lying less than 33 feet apart, one large and one small, both constructed from brick. Normally, a discovery like this would spark excitement, but this time, that excitement was quickly dampened. The larger tomb had been looted long ago. The burial chamber had collapsed, and its structure was severely damaged, leaving almost nothing of research value. In the end, the only artifact recovered was an ancient coin inscribed with the words Huang Song Tong Bao. Based on this coin, experts determined it was minted between 1039 and 1053, during the reign of Emperor Renzong of the Northern Song dynasty. This also allowed them to estimate that the larger tomb dated back to the Northern Song period. But perhaps the most intriguing part wasn't the ruined tomb, it was the smaller one just a few steps away. When the team began excavating the smaller tomb, they could hardly believe their eyes. In stark contrast to the larger one, this tomb was completely intact, untouched and undisturbed. And that's when a series of astonishing discoveries began to unfold. Inside, they found a coffin containing 2 sets of skeletal remains lying side by side. But what made it so strange was their posture. The leg bones appeared near the chest area, an arrangement that is difficult to explain using conventional burial practices. And it didn't stop there. Right next to the coffin was a small niche containing a 3rd set of remains. However, this skeleton was not intact. The bones were scattered and disorganized, as if they had been moved or handled in some way before being placed there. 3 individuals, yet buried in 3 completely different ways within the same space. Just think about that. What could have happened? The answer may lie on the walls of the tomb itself. Surrounding the chamber were murals whose colors remained surprisingly vivid, depicting scenes of everyday life. In total, there were 6 paintings, each telling its own story. The southwest wall featured a mural known as the banquet preparation scene, showing 3 servants preparing a feast. The northwest wall displayed the drinking scene, where two people sat across from each other at a table, accompanied by a woman holding a wine jug. Directly facing the tomb entrance was the door opening scene, portraying a woman slightly opening a door and looking outside. On the ceiling were smaller paintings reflecting the spiritual and religious beliefs of the tomb's occupants. Because no burial goods were found in the tomb, experts initially could not determine its exact age. However, based on the artistic techniques used in the murals, such as monochrome sketching, outlining, color filling, and shading, they identified styles characteristic of the late Northern Song period. From this, they concluded that the tomb likely dates back to that era. So who were the individuals buried inside this chamber? Upon closely examining the drinking scene, a theory about the identity and lives of the tomb's occupants began to take shape. Many researchers believe the tomb owner may have had both a primary wife and a concubine. The woman seated at the table is thought to be the lawful wife, while the woman standing beside her pouring wine may have been the concubine. It is possible that the three individuals were originally buried in separate locations, but for some reason, their remains were later reinterred together. However, due to her lower social status, the concubine may not have been allowed to rest within the main burial chamber, which could explain why her remains were placed separately in a nearby niche. Hearing this, doesn't the story feel both familiar and unsettling? One tomb, three individuals, and murals that, though seemingly lifeless, quietly tell a story of a complex relationship from the past. This discovery has helped archaeologists gain deeper insight into the daily life, clothing, and customs of people during the Song dynasty. It's no exaggeration to say that sometimes history doesn't need words. It simply leaves behind enough traces for us to piece the story together ourselves. Fascinating, isn't it? 100,000-year-old plug. Traces of an erased civilization. When we think of fossils, we usually imagine dinosaur bones, ancient seashells, or plant remains that have turned to stone over millions of years, right? But what if one day, right before your eyes, there appeared an object that looks exactly like a modern electrical device, encased in rock from tens of thousands of years ago? How would you react? You probably wouldn't believe it, right? And yet, such an object has actually been reported. The story goes back to 1998 when an electrical engineer named John Williams, during what seemed like an ordinary vacation, accidentally picked up a strange rock. At first glance, it didn't seem unusual until he discovered something almost unbelievable embedded inside it, a three-prong electrical plug, the kind of device we still see in modern life today. Without hesitation, Williams brought the rock home, and it immediately caught the attention of the scientific community. Researchers quickly stepped in, not just out of curiosity, but because they realized this could be an extremely important clue, one that might even challenge humanity's understanding of the history of civilization. As a first step, they determined the age of the rock using carbon-14 isotope analysis. The result left everyone stunned. The rock was estimated to be around 100,000 years old, a number far beyond what we associate with the development of human technology. But the shock didn't end there. Scientists continued investigating whether the plug could be a hoax or a fabricated object. They analyzed its structure, surface, and level of corrosion, and concluded that there were no signs it had been inserted into the rock at a later time. On the contrary, all evidence suggested it had been naturally embedded within the rock for a very long time. They then used X-ray scanning to examine it more deeply, and what they found made the mystery even harder to believe. The plug still exhibited a weak magnetic field. This suggests that, under certain conditions, it might even still function. At this point, you're probably wondering, if the rock is 100,000 years old, then when did this plug actually originate? And who could have created it? To address this, scientists proposed a bold hypothesis. Based on how deeply the plug is embedded within the rock, it's possible that the object existed first and was later encased by natural geological processes over tens of thousands of years. If that's true, its actual age could be far older than 100,000 years. From there, a wave of theories began to emerge. Some believe this could be evidence of an extraterrestrial civilization that once visited Earth in the distant past. Others argue it might be a remnant of a prehistoric human civilization, one that reached a high level of technological advancement but, for unknown reasons, completely disappeared. There are even those who suggest the plug looks so similar to modern devices that it can't simply be a coincidence. Could this be evidence of a cycle of civilization where humanity once advanced, then destroyed itself, only for history to begin again. All of these ideas sound like something out of a science fiction movie, yet they are tied to an object now in the hands of researchers. So what do you think? Is this a misunderstood piece of evidence, a sophisticated hoax, or truly a remnant of a lost world buried deep in the past? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The baby mummy, with the arm that shocked the archaeological world. It sounds like a joke at first, but this story left many scientists completely stunned for more than a decade. A tiny baby mummy, no bigger than you might imagine, was found clutching a corroded coin in its hand. And that strange detail opened the door to one of the most puzzling mysteries in modern archaeology. The story began in 2005, when Dr. Janos Balázs, a Hungarian archaeologist, was conducting an excavation in the village of Nyarlarinc in southern Hungary. Among more than 500 graves dating from the 12th to the 16th century, he came across something that didn't resemble anything else at the site. At first glance, it was so small that it was mistaken for the remains of a mouse, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was actually the arm of a child. And what sent chills down everyone's spine was this: the tiny hand was tightly gripping a copper coin. That wasn't all. Other recovered remains, including several vertebrae, parts of the pelvis, and leg bones, displayed an unusual green coloration. Both arms had turned green, but the right arm, the one holding the coin, was covered in a layer of dried tissue that was almost completely preserved. The skin on the back had also survived, still attached to 5 vertebrae. Meanwhile, the ribcage and shoulder bones appeared largely unaffected. Even at this point, something clearly felt off, right? But it took years of research after the discovery for Dr. Balázs and his team to determine that this was a premature infant, or a baby who died shortly after birth. The body measured only about 11 to 13 inches in length and weighed less than 2.2 pounds. Yet the question that continues to puzzle experts to this day is, why was there a coin in the baby's hand? As you may know, in archaeology, bones turning green is not uncommon, especially when they come into contact with metals like copper. However, in this case, the concentration of copper found in the remains was hundreds of times higher than normal. In fact, this is considered the highest copper concentration ever recorded in a mummy. The copper effectively acted as a natural preservative, preventing the child's hand from decomposing over time. Researchers also discovered a small ceramic vessel along with another heavily corroded coin. This led to the theory that before burial, the ancient people placed the coin in the baby's hand and then placed the entire body inside the vessel. Sound familiar? That's right. In many ancient cultures, coins were placed with the dead as a form of fare for the soul to journey into the afterlife. But the mystery doesn't end there. When scientists analyzed the coin, they discovered it was a kreutzer, a type of currency circulated between 1858 and 1862. This completely contradicts the dating of the burial site, which belongs to the medieval period. According to historical records, Christians of that era did not practice burying their dead with coins. So the question remains, who buried this child? And why did they use a ritual that didn't belong to that time? To this day, these questions remain unanswered. On one side, there is a rare scientific explanation involving copper-based mummification. On the other, there is a historical gap that still cannot be filled. What do you think is the most plausible explanation in this case? Ancient human remains in the Americas, revealing a forgotten massacre. In a quiet ancient burial ground where hundreds of skeletons had lain undisturbed for centuries, one set of remains suddenly seemed to speak, telling the story of a terrifying moment when history took a dramatic turn, not through words, but through a single hole in the skull, a trace left by a bullet from the distant past. This is the story from Peru, near what is now the capital city of Lima. During an excavation at an ancient Inca burial site in Puruchuco, Peru, archaeologist Guillermo Koch and his team discovered a skeleton with highly unusual characteristics. At first, they assumed it might belong to a relatively modern individual, perhaps a victim of recent violence. But the deeper they analyzed, the stranger it became. Eventually, the truth emerged, leaving everyone stunned. The remains actually belonged to a native individual from the 16th century, a time when the Inca Empire was facing one of the most significant upheavals in its history: the Spanish invasion. Most shocking of all, the skull had been pierced by a bullet. Yes, you heard that correctly, a bullet. Forensic experts conducted a detailed examination and identified a clear trajectory. The bullet entered from the back of the skull, passed through the head, and exited through the facial area. This indicates that the victim likely had no chance to defend themselves. But how could researchers be certain that this was a bullet fired by Spanish forces? The answer lies in modern technology. Using scanning probe microscopy, researchers from the University of Connecticut detected traces of metal, specifically iron, around the wound in the skull. These traces are consistent with damage caused by a musket, the type of firearm used by Spanish soldiers during their conquest of the Americas. At this point, the historical picture begins to take shape. It is highly likely that this individual was an Inca warrior who took part in resistance efforts against Spanish forces led by Francisco Pizarro, particularly during the Siege of Lima in 1536. This was a brutal conflict in which the indigenous people's rudimentary weapons were no match for the advanced firearms brought from Europe. But the story extends far beyond a single individual. Since 2004, archaeologists have excavated around 500 skeletons at the Purachuco burial site. Among them, more than 70 bodies were buried hastily, without jewelry or grave goods, completely contrary to the elaborate and respectful burial traditions of the Inca. Even more striking, over 30 skeletons show signs of severe trauma caused by iron weapons. What does that suggest? It strongly points to the possibility that these were victims of violent clashes, buried quickly while the conflict was still ongoing. No rituals, no ceremonies, just cold earth covering lives swept away by the tides of history. And that skull with the bullet hole stands as the first clear piece of evidence in the Americas showing that indigenous people were killed by Spanish firearms. This discovery is not only archaeologically significant, it also serves as a powerful reminder that behind the grand narratives of history lie countless tragic stories that have never been fully told. Hearing this, doesn't the past suddenly feel closer? As if all it takes is lifting a thin layer of soil for an entire blood-soaked era to reappear right before our eyes. Chilling yet undeniably fascinating, wouldn't you agree? The 200-year-old beauty whose body never decayed, still emitting a gentle fragrance in an ancient Chinese tomb. Have you ever imagined that a body buried underground for hundreds of years could still give off a soft, pleasant fragrance, as if time had never touched it? It sounds like something straight out of a historical drama, but this story is completely real. In fact, it left Chinese archaeologists utterly astonished when it was first discovered. Everything began on March 23, 2001, when a group of construction workers were carrying out a project in Dongshan County, Suzhou City, Anhui Province, China. While digging, they suddenly struck a hard object deep underground. As they continued to excavate, an ancient coffin gradually emerged, buried more than 13 feet below the surface. Realizing this was no ordinary find, they immediately notified local authorities and archaeological experts. Once the archaeologists arrived and carefully opened the coffin, what happened next left everyone in shock. Instead of the strong, unpleasant odor typically associated with decomposition, a faint, gentle fragrance drifted into the air. Some even claimed that the scent could be detected from several hundred meters away. Chilling, isn't it? Inside the coffin lay the body of a woman. What's truly astonishing is that her state of preservation seemed to defy all conventional understanding. Her black hair was still neatly tied back. Her pale skin had not fully decomposed and retained an incredible level of elasticity. Some of her joints could still move slightly, giving the eerie impression that she had only recently passed away. After thorough examination, experts determined that the woman had died around 200 years ago. She stood about 5 feet 3 inches tall, weighed around 97 pounds, and was only about 30 years old at the time of her death. A very young age, which makes the mystery even more intriguing. The unusual fragrance emanating from her body led many to draw comparisons to a famous figure in Chinese popular culture. Fragrant concubine Xiang Fei, a legendary beauty said to emit a natural scent that attracted butterflies, as depicted in the TV series My Fair Princess. But could this be a real-life inspiration behind the legend? To answer that question, historians quickly stepped in and proposed that the character of Xiang Fei was actually based on Consort Rong, a favored concubine of the Qianlong Emperor. She came from a noble Uyghur family in Xinjiang and was brought into the imperial court for political reasons. Consort Rong was known for her beauty, intelligence, and the emperor's deep affection for her. However, historical records tell a very different story. There is no mention whatsoever of Consort Rong possessing any natural body fragrance. More importantly, the examination of the body in the coffin completely ruled out this theory. On the woman's neck, researchers discovered a deep T-shaped cut, a clear indication that she had been murdered, possibly with a sword, and likely had little to no chance to defend herself. In contrast, historical accounts state that Consort Rong died at the age of 54 due to illness, with no connection to any violent death. So who was the woman in this coffin? Why did her body not decompose like normal remains? And how could it still emit such a mysterious fragrance after 200 years? Could there be a hidden secret in the burial method, or perhaps an untold story that history never recorded? What do you think is the most plausible explanation for this mystery? If you have any theories, don't hesitate to share them in the comments below the video so everyone can join the discussion. The mysterious mass grave at Chen, uncovering the secret of 30 people and a lost civilization. There are places that, at first glance, seem like nothing more than the worn-out remnants of a bygone era. But the deeper you dig, the more unsettling the stories become. The ancient city of Chen in Peru is one of those places. A site where, beneath layers of dry, barren earth, lies a mystery that has remained unsolved for centuries. The story began with an excavation at Chen, an ancient city located about 310 miles north of Lima, Peru. Archaeologists discovered a mass grave dating back to the 15th century. At first it seemed like an ordinary burial site. But as the layers of soil were carefully removed, the truth beneath left everyone in stunned silence. Inside the grave were the remains of 25 to 30 individuals. What stood out immediately was that most of them were women and children. Even more striking, the majority of the women appeared to be under the age of 30. Just hearing that raises questions, doesn't it? A burial site with so many individuals, but very few adult men. So what exactly happened here? The mystery deepened when archaeologists uncovered tens of thousands of ceramic vessels along with numerous artifacts, including needles and textile tools. These were not ordinary, everyday items. They bore clear signs of belonging to individuals of high social status. Because of this, experts believe the site may have been the resting place of elites from the Chimu culture, a civilization that once flourished along the northern coast of Peru. The tomb itself is not particularly large, measuring only about 10 feet by 10 feet, yet it contains an astonishing number of remains. This has led many to ask, could this have been a site of mass human sacrifice? Addressing this question, archaeologist Jorge Menese explained that the Chimu people did indeed practice human sacrifice. However, what makes this case unusual is that there is no clear evidence showing that such rituals were ever performed within the city of Chen itself. In other words, while the possibility of sacrifice exists, it cannot yet be confirmed. So what caused the deaths of these individuals? To find answers, researchers have had to analyze each skeleton in detail, examining trauma marks on bones as well as environmental factors surrounding the burial. Every bone fragment, every artifact, could serve as a crucial piece of the puzzle in reconstructing a story that has been buried for centuries. Even so, it may take much more time before a definitive conclusion can be reached. For now, all we can do is wait. Now, let's take a moment to talk about Chen itself. Chen is far from an ordinary site. In the Chimu language, its name means radiant sun. True to its name, it was once the center of power for a civilization that thrived from around 900 to 1450. Covering an area of about 7.7 square miles, Chen was built as a massive fortress, featuring 10 large palaces surrounded by high, solid walls. At its peak, it was home to around 30,000 people. But everything changed when the Inca Empire rose to power and conquered the region. A once glorious civilization collapsed, leaving behind ruins and countless unanswered questions. In 1986, Chen was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Ironically, it was also placed on the list of endangered heritage sites due to the effects of weather and human activity. Because of this, scientists are now racing against time to preserve and uncover the secrets that still remain hidden beneath the surface. The time-traveling glass cup found in a 1,000-year-old princess's tomb. Sometimes, when we look back at history, we realize that 10,000 years of human civilization is really just a blink of an eye compared to Earth's 4.5 billion-year timeline. Countless dynasties have risen and fallen, and countless bloody wars have faded into the past. What remains are a few lines in history books or secrets lying silently underground, waiting to be uncovered. And sometimes, those very secrets make us question whether the past was truly as primitive as we often assume. A striking example of this dates back to 1986, when a group of workers were constructing a reservoir in Tongliao City, Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, China. While digging, they unexpectedly discovered an ancient tomb, later identified by experts as belonging to the Liao dynasty. What began as a chance discovery quickly revealed its immense value, drawing attention from both archaeologists and the public. At the time, knowledge about the Liao dynasty was still quite limited. Previously discovered royal tombs had mostly been severely damaged, offering little research value. This tomb, therefore, was like a rare doorway into the past of a once powerful dynasty that existed from 907 to 1125. After careful study, experts determined that this was the tomb of Princess Chen of the Liao dynasty, the granddaughter of Emperor Jingzong. She held a noble status, yet her life was tragically short. Born in 1001, she passed away in 1018 at just 18 years old, an age when life should have only just begun. Historical records indicate that she was deeply favored by the royal family. Her title was changed multiple times, from Princess Taiping to Princess of the State of Yue, reflecting her special position within the imperial court. This also explains why her tomb was constructed with such intricate craftsmanship and filled with countless valuable treasures. According to the tomb inscription, the princess died suddenly from illness, just 2 years after marrying her uncle, who was 10 years older than her. Inside the tomb, alongside a large number of burial items such as gold, silver, lacquerware, pearls, agate, amber, and fine silk, archaeologists were astonished to discover glass cups that looked almost identical to modern drinking glasses. These cups featured thin walls, thick bases, and perfectly smooth curves, so refined that if you placed them in a bar today, few would suspect they were made 1,000 years ago. There was only one small detail that made them not entirely modern: a golden lid attached to the cup by a delicate chain. Without this feature, experts might have mistaken them for objects accidentally left behind by tomb raiders. This discovery immediately raised a series of questions. The Khitan people, the founders of the Liao dynasty, were traditionally nomadic, known for their bold and rugged lifestyle. So how did they come to possess such delicate, sophisticated, and seemingly ahead-of-their-time objects? More importantly, with the technology available 1,000 years ago, how were they able to produce such clear, flawless glassware? Did these cups hold a special meaning for Princess Chen? Or were they symbols of something we still do not fully understand? At the time, all of these questions remained unanswered. It wasn't until later, through more in-depth research, that a plausible explanation emerged. Although the Liao and Song dynasties were often in conflict, the Silk Road continued to operate, connecting China with Western civilizations. This cultural exchange may have introduced advanced glassmaking techniques, contributing to the creation of such ahead-of-their-time objects. Yet even with this explanation, the sense of mystery lingers. Because when looking at these glass cups, we're not just seeing ancient artifacts, we're witnessing a piece of history that challenges our very understanding of the past. The remains of two boys in a 34,000-year-old grave in Russia. You know, our world is always fascinating, especially when it comes to things from the ancient past. Some archaeological discoveries don't just surprise us, they force us to rethink the way we see history entirely. Because sometimes what we assume to be primitive actually reveals a level of sophistication and depth far beyond our imagination. And the story of two boys buried in a 34,000-year-old grave in Russia is a perfect example. Imagine standing in a freezing region near the city of Vladimir, Russia. This area was once part of the Ice Age, a time when humans had to struggle every single day just to survive. And yet, in such a harsh environment, archaeologists uncovered a grave dating back 34,000 years, a number so staggering it leaves people speechless. Inside the grave, they found the remains of two boys, one about 10 years old, the other around 12. But what shocked researchers the most wasn't the age of the burial, it was the way these children were laid to rest. This was no ordinary grave. The two boys were placed inside a long burial chamber, facing each other, their heads positioned close together, as if they were still connected even after death. Surrounding them was not just soil, but what could only be described as a true treasure trove. More than 10,000 small beads made from ivory, carefully arranged, 300 fox teeth, and at least 20 bracelets of various kinds. And that's not all. Researchers also discovered bones of mammoths, deer, and even human remains placed within the chest area of the two boys. After examining and analyzing the skeletons, experts concluded that both boys had died from serious illness. In particular, the 12-year-old appeared to have suffered greatly before his death. Bone analysis suggests he may have been bedridden for a long period, surviving only on soft foods. A short and difficult life, but the way he and the other boy were buried tells a completely different story. After death, their bodies were carefully prepared, adorned with valuable items, and buried with a level of ceremony comparable to that of a king. This raises a major question. Why? To find answers, researchers compared this grave with another burial from the same period, that of a man around 40 years old. The results were even more surprising. The adult's grave was much simpler, with almost none of the luxurious items found with the two children. Researcher Eric Trinkhaus suggested that burial practices for children during this period were entirely different from those for adults. But how exactly they differed and why such a significant contrast existed remains unclear to this day. Some theories propose that the two boys may have belonged to a high-status family within their community. Others suggest that their unusual health conditions may have led to special treatment, perhaps as a sign of respect, or even tied to spiritual beliefs that we still don't fully understand. It's also important to remember that these boys were buried toward the end of the Ice Age. During this time, the climate had begun to warm slightly, making it easier for people to dig graves and carry out more complex burial rituals. This suggests that even in harsh conditions, people of that era placed great importance on death and on honoring the deceased. So who were these two boys? Why were they treated as such extraordinary individuals? And did the items buried with them carry deeper meanings we have yet to uncover? The answers may still lie beneath that frozen ground, waiting to be revealed one day. But one thing is certain. This story shows us that even in the earliest periods of human history, people possessed emotions, beliefs, and ways of expressing care and respect that we are still trying to understand today. 300 Viking skeletons in a single grave reveal a bloody mystery from 1,200 years ago in England. There are places that seem strangely peaceful on the surface, but dig just a few feet underground, and a violent past suddenly comes into sharp focus. In Derbyshire, England, one such discovery has taken archaeologists decades to piece together, fragment by fragment. Here, researchers uncovered a mass grave containing the remains of around 300 individuals. Yes, you heard that right. Not just dozens, but hundreds of skeletons piled on top of one another as if all were tied to a single horrific event. Analysis suggests that these remains date back to the 9th century, and they most likely belong to Viking warriors, men who once spread fear across Europe during the medieval period. Just imagine it, warriors who once dominated the battlefield, now lying silently in a mass burial pit. So what exactly happened to them? As excavations continued, archaeologists found not only human bones, but also a number of accompanying artifacts. Among them were an axe, several knives, and notably, 5 silver coins dated between 872 and 875. These objects act like time markers, helping researchers more precisely determine when these individuals lived and died. But what makes the story even more chilling is the discovery of 4 skeletons with distinctly different characteristics. Experts believe these may have been victims of ritual sacrifice, possibly carried out as part of Viking funeral practices. In other words, when these warriors died, others may have been killed to accompany them into the afterlife. Hearing that sends a chill down your spine, doesn't it? Now let's talk a bit about Repton, the site where these remains were found. Repton is no stranger to history. Before falling into Viking hands, it was an important religious center of the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Mercia, a sacred place closely tied to royalty. But everything changed when the Viking army arrived. According to historical records, in 873, Viking forces occupied Repton and turned it into a military stronghold. They even forced the king of Mercia into exile in Paris. This alone shows just how powerful and brutal this force was. It's very possible that during this period, a major battle or deadly event took place, leading to the burial of hundreds of people in a single mass grave. Some of the skeletons were found relatively well preserved, allowing scientists to study age, sex, and even possible causes of death. However, with such a large number of remains, identifying individuals is nearly impossible. Each skeleton represents a story, but together they merge into a single dark chapter of history. What's interesting is that excavations at this site began in the 1980s, and even today, researchers are still analyzing the findings in search of clearer answers. Despite many theories, the ultimate truth still lies hidden somewhere beneath layers of soil and bone. So what do you think really happened at Repton over 1,200 years ago? A brutal battle? A chilling religious ritual? Or perhaps a combination of both? The answer may still be waiting to be uncovered, and who knows, future discoveries might force us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the Vikings. Gold inlaid jewelry in a 1,500-year-old tomb of an ancient beauty. In 2011, a team of experts from the Datong Institute of Archaeology conducted a pre-construction survey in Datong City, Shanxi Province, China. During their inspection, they unexpectedly discovered an ancient tomb buried deep underground. Inside the tomb lay the remains of a woman, carefully placed within a coffin. Her head rested on a lemon-yellow pillow, and inside the pillow were 2 bricks decorated with twisted rope patterns, a small detail, yet one that reflects the meticulous care invested in the burial process. At the entrance of the tomb, a stone inscription clearly read, Han Farong, wife of official Kui Zhen. Her name was known, and part of her identity revealed, but her exact age at the time of death remained a mystery. Based on the tomb structure and the artifacts found within, archaeologists determined that Farong was a noblewoman who lived around 1,500 years ago, during the late Northern Wei dynasty. At that time, Datong served as the imperial capital, an epicenter of power, culture, and luxury in ancient China. But what truly left experts stunned were the pieces of jewelry buried with her. The first to capture attention was a pair of gold earrings. These were not simple designs. They were extraordinarily intricate, featuring a combination of a human face and a coiling dragon motif. The face on the earrings had curly hair, deep-set eyes, and a high nose bridge, features that suggest cultural exchange and influence during that era. Below the shoulders was a lotus design, symbolizing purity, while additional decorations included teardrop-shaped gemstones, connected by fine gold chains and accented with amethyst. Just think about it. 1,500 years ago, with limited technology, how could artisans create such incredibly fine details? Experts say that although many gold earrings from the Northern Wei period have been discovered in recent years, Farong's pair ranks among the most exquisite, nearly unmatched in both complexity and beauty. And it doesn't stop there. Farong was also adorned with a necklace composed of around 5,000 tiny beads. Although the string had decayed over time, the original arrangement of the beads remained intact during excavation, allowing archaeologists to reconstruct the entire piece. Once restored, the necklace revealed itself as a true work of art. It included 10 gold beads of varying sizes, 9 gold plaques, 2 crystal beads, 42 pearls, and more than 4,800 tiny glass beads in blue and black, each no larger than a grain of millet. Just hearing those numbers is overwhelming, isn't it? Every small detail came together to form a perfect whole, demonstrating not only immense wealth, but also the refined aesthetic sense and advanced craftsmanship of that era. In addition to Farong's tomb, archaeologists discovered 2 other nearby graves, suggesting that this area once served as a burial ground for the elite. Yet among them all, Farong's tomb stood out the most, not only for its remarkable state of preservation, but also for the deeply personal character reflected in her jewelry. Unfortunately, to this day, many questions remain unanswered. Who was Farong truly? What was her life like? And why were such intricately crafted pieces created specifically to be buried with her? For now, those answers remain just out of reach. As you can see, the world of archaeology is incredibly fascinating, isn't it? It doesn't just reveal mysterious discoveries from the ancient past. It also opens the door to an entirely different world, a vivid and intricate picture that we can hardly even imagine today. So, which discovery impressed you the most? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to give ancient history a like and subscribe to the channel. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.